welcome everybody to this. And now I think it's the third in our 8 teachings under the title of From Poison to Nectar, mainly about the elements and the 5 Buddha families. And so, as always, we take a deep breath. Remember, this is our Saturday. This is our invisible shrine room and our Dharma Sangha. And it's wonderful to be able to share Dharma together in our precious human existence. These moments of practice, moments of study, learning are very vital seeds for our future. And how powerful a seed we sow today depends on our mind as we enter into this teaching, the beginning, as we sit with the teaching, listening mindfully, with an open heart, open mind, caringly for other beings, and as we conclude at the end with dedication, good in the beginning, good in the middle, good at the end. So the good beginning is to try and find a powerful motivation. So please try and find all the love inside you. Think of the biggest love you ever had, and then make it even bigger and purer, and extend it to everyone. The good, the bad, and the ugly, and the beautiful, all of them. Everyone. We're here for everyone, and being here for everyone is the best thing we can do for ourselves. It really is. So with a big mind, including as many as we can, and especially the people who are our karma to be close to in this life, and with a loving mind, with a very, very, very happy mind, because we are learning about the Dharma, then we say a few prayers. Thank you.
Sonje chodang soji chonam la chancho pado dane chapsanje. Tagi jinso jipe sanam je rola penchera sonje drupara sho. Semchen tamche dewa tang dewe judang dempara joche. Dongal dang dongal ji jodang tralwara joche. Dongal me pen dewa tampa dang men tralwara joche. Nyerin chadan tan tralwe. Tanyom chempola ne para joreche. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatra. Om kurimara jite karota keware tejowati oloyane. Vishudani male malapana ye kukore. Kaka grase grasana. Omuki paramuki amuki. Shamme dawane sawagraha bandhanane nigrihita. Savabara pravadina vimukta marapasha saveta buddha mudra. Anugatita savamare putsarita parishuddhe. Piga shantu savamara kama. Palden sawe lama rinpoche, dage chewara pende denshola, kadrin chempo kone jizonte, kuson tuji ngadrup saldo sol.
Okay, so where are we let's go back to something that I maybe said in the first talk of this series. I can't quite remember. And if I didn't, then I ought to have said a bit more. But it's to talk about something very important with regard to all of these teachings about the Buddha families and the elements. And, you know, a lot of our Dharma study, the big Dharma study, is about cause and result. It's really the heart of the Buddha's teaching. It's everything. If you really understand cause and result, automatically you understand shunyata, voidness, what are called the deep teachings. Actually, the deepest teachings are those on karma. So causes produce results. And all of the results, almost all of the results that we know and that we study, causes and results, are what are called compounded phenomena, meaning that things come together, and the coming together in itself produces a result. So let's take an example of something I used to like to play with. Magician's flash paper, right? Magician's flash paper is paper, certain type of easy burn paper that's impregnated with a very flammable solution. So somebody made the paper, causes and conditions made the paper. Causes and conditions made the flammable material in a laboratory somewhere. And then somebody put the two together and impregnated the paper. And then at the precise moment you want the flash, which is the result, then you bring in the final cause, which is a spark, a flame. And then poof, the whole thing goes flash and it's finished. The thing that makes the spark a device, it's like a cigarette lighter. Somebody made that from materials that were mined or grown or whatever it was. Everything's got causes behind it and more causes. And when they all come together, then there is the result. So in this case, it's a vivid one. It's a flash. Quickly gone. But what's behind it is many causes. It's a composite. So just now, you are watching me. I'm looking at you on the screen. You are listening to me, and I'm talking to you. My mum made my vocal cords, and they were trained by my teachers, and they've got to this point. Our society made these devices which connect us with a whole history behind them. And then your optician made your glasses if you're looking at this through spectacles, and so on and so on. So many causes and conditions are making the result, which is this sound, and each moment. Everything we experience, everything, does not just happen. Everything is due to causes and conditions. So we study that causality. And it's very important when it comes to our own karma, our life situations, our health, our wealth, our friendships, our safety, and so on and so on. Everything we experience is a result. There are only two things in the whole vastness of time and space, no matter where you end up, in whichever fantastic reality. Only two things that are not produced by causes and conditions. One is space. Nothing came together to make space. So we think a lot about that. We don't have time today. And the other is our Buddha nature, Buddha mind. For us, it's our Buddha nature. It is Buddha mind, always has been, always will be. It's our changeless nature. That was never made by anything. No causes and conditions make it. We need to get our head around that because it's not like anything we experience. It's isness. In the scriptures, it's called the as it is ness. There's a ness on the end. Because it was never made by anything, it can never be destroyed. Everything that's a composite phenomenon is there due to all the things that make it, the coming together of those things. And so it is subject to deterioration as the components disappear, or an end when there's not enough to make it happen anymore. Our Buddha mind is not like that. So, assuming we've got our heads around that, at least the idea can make sense. Actually, once you start sitting and meditating and thinking about it, it's enormous. That there is a something that's always been, that's always there, that doesn't suffer, that's so perfect, that is so joyful, blissful, and happy. Nothing made it. All of the great meditations of the Karmapas never made their experience. It wasn't built brick by brick, moment by moment. It's always been there. So then we come to this point, and you need to know this term, a result by removal. Not a result through causes and conditions coming together. Not that type of result. Not like my body, not like flash paper, not causes and conditions making something, but a result by removal. So, simple example, and we'll use the other thing, which is not a creation, which is space. Okay. When you clear out a room to make a space, then let's say before you make the space, your room can be very cluttered. You've got tables, chairs, furniture, carpets, things on the wall, your average sort of room with about 1,000 things inside it. So you take those things away, then the room is empty. But did you make the emptiness? Or was that space always there and you just reveal it by taking things away? So taking things away doesn't make the space like you could make a pot or make something else. Space was always there. Space pervaded the things when they were in the room, but we become very aware of the space once we take everything away. No new space comes in. No one, nothing created the space, but space can't work as space. You can't get from one end of the room to the other until you take stuff away, and it becomes manifest to us, space. So once we've got that idea, we can understand these 5 Buddha families that we're allocating to the directions. They've always been there. Our mind has always been Buddha, truly. But it can't function as Buddha. We can't recognize it as Buddha until we remove what's blocking up that knowing, that awareness, that use of Buddha mind, the activity of our own true inner nature. But what we do on the path, all of the learning, all of the meditating, all of the virtue, all of the kind deeds are not causes and conditions making enlightenment. It always was. It doesn't need to be made. It's there. As one very famous text, the same says, the same before as it was after. But it's a result that we, in our relative realities, can only achieve by removing what blocks it. Our ignorance, our mind poisons, all our relative story. Our relative story, the story of me, is hard to let go of. And so we bring in everything we need to know, need to do. So that's sort of the first point for today. And all of this course just strikes me again and again and again, how profound it is. When I've been so happy to prepare for it. Just a second, I'm checking something. Because for me, it's a learning. My own teacher, Hakon Rinpoche, said, you will never learn more than when you have to start to teach. So these last weeks of preparing, I've been so happy because I've gone deeper into the topic of these families. So a result by removal. Removal of many things. We have to remove our karma, purification practices. We have to remove our confused thinking and our harmful emotional reactions and the harm that they cause us to do with our speech and with our body. We have a lot to remove, and all of our practice is for that. Now, we had this in the 6 Parameters teaching. I can't afford to spend a lot of time on it today. But for instance, it looks like you are developing generosity. Ah, the wonderful bodhisattva that you are becoming kinder and kinder, and more generous with yourself and everything you have. It looks like progress. But actually, when we look truthfully, deeply into it, what are you doing to become more generous? You're gradually taking away your meanness. It's a result. We are naturally generous. Buddha mind would give anything they need to anybody. How could it not? If the resource is there and you have it, and somebody needs it, how could you not give it? We can't do that. We are afraid. We're afraid of loss. We are attached to things, and so on and so on. So actually, our becoming better and better is actually a process of destruction of what limits us, what darkens us, what poisons us. And that's what this course is about. Now, also what we need to remove on a deeper level is the root cause of all of those harmful reactions, harmful thoughts, limiting reactions and thoughts. The cause of all of that is a dualistic mind, where all of our thinking is based on self and others. So we need to remove that. It's a huge task, and it gets more and more subtle. And I was in conversation with a friend about this last week, and it gives me an excuse to do one of my favorite things, which is to talk about the 9 levels of grossness. You know, at first we have to get rid of gross duality. At first we have to get rid of gross greed or gross jealousy. When they're gone, life's a lot quieter. And in that quietness, all of a sudden you realize that, oh, Even though I'm not acting out the jealousy, I've still got this feeling of jealousy, jealous thoughts and so on. That's level 2. So we work on that and it quietens down. And only then do you see much more subtle levels of, like your history, your background, what people did to you, how you reacted to them, how your mum was, how your dad was, how your brother was, your sister was. We start to feel, all this stuff goes really deep. And then 3, 4, it gets more and more subtle. So we have 9 levels to work through. Gross, gross, middling, gross, subtle, gross, middling, 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 subtle, middling, gross, subtle, middling, subtle, and subtle, subtle. And when we study the 5 levels of the Buddha's path, we see quite where these disappear, because it's their disappearance that takes us along the path. Once you've got rid of the gross, gross, and the middling, gross, well, that's where you are. You're this far along the path. So we see, once we talk about the path and the human levels and then the bodhisattva levels, we see some of these things, they take so long to go. And that's very related to our topics, because as we go through these Buddha's wisdoms, we'll see that although we can't really separate them, some of them will emerge before others in our own meditation, practice, experience. Now, I want to go back and finish what we started in the last session, which was about the Vajra family. And there was one question, I think it was Paul who asked, but it doesn't matter. There was one question about the diagram. Sorry, my printer doesn't work very well, but that diagram that's on the course advert. And so in there, then because it's a diagram, then Amitabha Buddha is on top as far as the diagram goes. But of course, this is a ground plan. So all of these are flat like this. And if I was a whiz with 3D computer graphics in the last week, I would have made something in one of these 3D travel fly-through things where we're on the ground, and then Buddha Ratna Sambhava's on this side, and on that side you've got a Moga Siddhi, and then just one who's not in the same plane as ourselves, which is the one above our heads. So just to talk about that diagram. So last session we were with the Vajra family, which is always in front of us. The East is always in front of us. And you'll remember that the result by removal that we're going to attain is this blessing, the state of Akshobhya Buddha. In order to get that result by removal, we have to remove every aspect of hostility, from anger and rage to frustration and the feeling of being at odds, not connected, and so on and so on. We went through that last week. I'm not sure, the last session, and I'm not sure if in that session I also mentioned not just the hostility towards other beings or circumstances, such as ill health or weather or what's going on around you, peace and war and so on. Not just hostility there, but hostility towards ourselves, self-hatred, self-punishment. That needs to be included, any aspect of hostility. We saw that the root of that hostility that we need to overcome is fixed ideas, inherited thinking, or the way we've let our thinking develop, where we see right and wrong, we see according to our own paradigms, our own values. We see, now let's take some of this a little bit further. It's to do with the way we see things. Not see with our eyes, but see with our mind. And in other areas of teaching, we call this view. The way we view the world, the way we view other people, the way we view our own world and its people, and the circumstances in which we live. The view. And in particular, the characteristic of the Vajra family is a feeling of seeing through. I see through you. I know what's going on with that person. I know what's going on with these politics in the world. There's a feeling of knowing. We've got a template. We've got a way of judging, evaluating, labeling. And in there, we see fault. We are critical, and things upset us. So it didn't ought to be like that. It didn't ought to be like that for me or in the world. So we get this whole idea of a fixed mind. We call it the Vajra family in the East. The Vajra is the toughest thing in the universe in the old legends. Nothing can destroy a Vajra, which was the weapon of the god Indra, but a Vajra can destroy anything. So this idea of toughness, like diamond type toughness. Some people translate Vajra as diamond. So when we've got really fixed ideas, rigid ideas, then the world is very black and white, right and wrong, good and bad, and so on and so on. Now, we associate the Vajra family in the East with the water element, which is the element of winter and the very beginning of spring. When we studied the elements in the previous course, and we saw the cycles of the seasons, then the water element time of winter is the time when things have been stored up from the past, when the ground is hard. So there's this idea of past inheritance, but it's the beginning of spring. So the past inheritance is ready to become something. So these fixed ideas that are so characteristic of hostility and aggression and ill will and so on, the being at odds, being in conflict with the realities we experience, has its ground in our past. Certainly our history in this life, the earliest inherited stuff from our parents, and then how with time we reacted to that and created ourselves as we grew up. Certainly all of that has given us our opinions that we have now. And then beyond that, a whole history of past lives, some of which are long gone and don't have much influence, some of which, even though they were some lives ago, some powerful things happened in those lives, and their influence carries on now. So there is this feeling of winter, if we go to the seasons. If we go to the 24-hour clock, then we're in the time of the end of the night and the very beginning of dawn. So now, we're dealing with that. We need to remove the hostility and the aggression and all those shades of it. And then their immediate causes are fixed ideas in order to get the result. Last time I talked about the main bodhisattva's remedy, medicine for taking away what needs to be removed, which is forbearance. Forbearance, patience, tolerance. I like the word forbearance. So, and then we saw that Akshobhya Buddha epitomizes the power of forbearance. So now, assuming that that has been absorbed, we need to go a step further, because here we are in Vajrayana practice. When we talk about the 5 Buddha families and all their details, we are most definitely in Vajrayana. In mainstream Mahayana, they don't occur. So we're in Vajrayana practice. So now in the East, in front of us, what does Akshobhya Buddha, with his earth-touching mudra, embody? It is the immediate presence of the mirror-like wisdom. Not only beyond hostility and aggression, but beyond a gradual path that remedies hostility and aggression, which is our normal bodhisattva path. Vajrayana is not just the quick way, when it's really up and running, it's the immediate way. On this day, in this session, in this moment, on this cushion, now. All of this stuff that's your story, and whatever hostility, aggression you carry, it's like a dream. We can wake up in this moment. So Buddha, Akshobhya in front of us, represents not just transcendence of the poison that needs to go, but transcendence also of a gradual path of working on it. In some of the previous teachings about Vajrayana, we've understood, I hope, something of the difference between the gradual bodhisattva path over many lives, many eons even, working on it gradually. My anger, yes, I'm working on it. My feeling of I like him, but I don't like that one. Yeah, that feeling, that almost organic, chemical feeling of being close to some people and bleh, for other people, or even if they're nice people, but they're not my kind of people. This kind of thing where we separate ourselves into groups. We can work on it. But if we can, and I mentioned this in the first one, cut through, rip the veil apart, then in this very moment, the ultimate peace, the highest form of forbearance, is right there. Our mind stops the rubbish, stops it, throws it out, and lets its truth be. And all the stories of Ken getting upset, Ken working on his upsetness, well, that whole Ken story, even though it's still going on because it's the way it is, nevertheless, we are wanting moments when we can relativize, get some objectivity on this story of Ken dealing with his past, Ken dealing with his limited mind, his limited understanding, his ignorance, his own level of being. Wonderful, got this far. Got a long way to go. So that's happening on one level. Down there on planet Earth in the 21st century, there's a Ken toddling along on Ken's path. But with the Buddha families and Vajrayana, we get a breath of fresh air where we realize, who Ken really is, which is the same as you really are, and everyone really is. So Akshobhya is not just embodying the practice of forbearance on the gradual path. It's a reminder that all the time, everything is perfect. In the creation of relative existence, where we're making karma, then we have three types of karma. Harmful karma, we call it non-virtue. Neutral karma, where we're doing something, but it doesn't really create good or harm. And then virtue, doing the good things, creating the good futures. All three of those are known in the text as tainted karma, because they're all tainted by duality, and they keep us in the cycle, the round of existence. If you make virtuous karma, you get nice existence later, and you help other people make their lives better. If you do non-virtuous karma, then you're making horrors for yourself in the future, and in the process you're not helping others, you're harming them. And then a lot of neutral stuff we do every day, waste time, but doesn't harm, doesn't benefit. But all of it keeps you in samsara. It's only, as we saw in the Paramitta's teaching, what doesn't have me and you, I and other, subject and object in it, that really takes us out and is the bodhisattva path. This is why we need to cut through. We need to transcend in the moment through Vajrayana practice. In the actual practice, which we'll come to in one of the last sessions of this course, then that's the whole reason why the practice often starts. Everything becomes void. In other words, we see the whole thing as a dream. Then out of the voidness, we emerge as what today's Guru Rinpoche Day. So you are Guru Rinpoche, you are Buddha. We spend an hour of practice being Buddha to remind ourselves of who we really are. So anyway, we were in last week the Vajra family, and now we have this mirror-like wisdom on the water element. So it would be great if we were all together physically in a room with some huge mirrors, flat mirrors, concave, convex mirrors, and we could play around with mirrors. Wish we could, but we have to do it all through blah, 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 or bala, 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 as Jimmy Rinpoche calls it. But think of a mirror. It maybe even need to be a spherical mirror, not quite like the ones you have in the ballrooms, that make all the pretty patterns, because it's going to reflect the whole universe throughout time and space. The Buddha mind. Everyone, everything that ever existed, will ever exist, is already there. That's why in moments of some connection with it, we glimpse the past or the future, And it's why the Karmapa is known as the knower of the 3 times. So this mirror, a mirror that reflects something, reflects everything so perfectly. But now what we do, if we were in a room with real mirrors, we'd look in the mirror and see what you see in there. Now, actually, is it in there? What you see? And if you turn the mirror around, or what's in front of it changes very quickly, it reflects everything perfectly. I always think, because I'm in France, of this Tour de France where you get hundreds of cyclists. And imagine a mirror in a shop window with the Tour de France going by. You've got in less than a minute, maybe 100 cycles go by, each one with their rider, and some are drinking and some are doing this. The mirror will, without fail, reflect every single detail of everything that goes by. Are any of those cyclists or cycles or anything that's been shown in the mirror, are they in the mirror itself? Was it like a stage where the stage hands had to come in quickly and change all of the... Of course not. The mirror is not what it reflects, but it reflects everything. Now, if the mirror had a character, as each cyclist goes by, it will be thinking, oh yeah, he's not doing that right. And he might, with a bit of luck, overtake that one. And but it doesn't. It just knows the isness. It's a mind beyond opinion, beyond inherited paradigms, value judgments, the whole seeing of good, bad, right, wrong, better, worse, and ought to be like this, ought to be like that. It all goes because in the pure mind, which is like a pure mirror, to do what it does, a mirror just needs to be perfect glass and perfect silver. In our case, it's perfect wisdom, perfect compassion. Everything is there, just as it is. And its very isness holds all of the karma that was behind it and all of the future that's in front of it. It just is. There's no need to judge anybody, evaluate anything from one limited mindset, because the isness of everything with its history and future is perfectly there in the mirror-like wisdom. Now, this is not something for me to tell you. This is something for you to go away and play with. Our intellect is such a good friend, but it's such a blooming nuisance. Because when you hear something, you think you've got it, and you haven't. We need to practice. We need to explore. We need to become curious like a child. We need to actually go and play with mirrors and look at them and what they do and think what they are. And then think about mirror-like wisdom as it's described, then go back to the mirror and try and get it and sit with it. Anyway, mirror-like wisdom is like nothing in this world. And as I mentioned in the previous session, it is not something which is very important and very useful, the way that your life and the people you meet mirror you as a personality. This is very true. And once we meet circumstances, it's like meeting the guru. They are a relative mirror to show us who we are. And as your path intensifies, that relative mirror-like quality, where the script writers in the sky put you into more and more hilarious circumstances, because your path is to learn this just now, and it's going to be rubbed into your nose until you get it. And that tends to mirror itself in what life does, what comes through the post, what people say, what people do, what your body does, and so on. That is a very, very useful mirroring experience on our relative level, but we are not talking about that with Buddha Akshobhya. We are talking about Buddha's wisdom, in which there is everything and everybody throughout time and space. And the very fact of that, when we come back into our relative bodhisattva path, will give us courage, because we realize, yeah, here I am. How the hell did I end up like this? But here I am. And this is me, and this is this body, and this is this life. And these are the people, and these are the circumstances. But we know how vast existence is. So all the time, right there in front of us, Buddha Akshobhya, so profoundly blue, so kind and loving, and touching the earth, so grounded, is there to remind us of the Vajra-like indestructible nature of Buddha mind, as opposed to the cutting Vajra of opinions. And the other thing I need to talk about is the water element, which is, we saw in the first session about the Vajra family, is about connections. Rather than the way actual water can be taken as a simile, as an example, it's about connections. So here, let's just say for the mirror-like wisdom, just like a mirror will reflect whoever comes in front of it, or whatever's in front of it. It doesn't say, no, I don't want those ones, or yes, please. It just reflects. So like that, water adapts to the space it's in. It wraps itself around very fluidly, doesn't need to think, just embraces a situation. Now when we come to the very good gurus, help that they offer you or me, then their kindness, their wisdom immediately tailors itself to you, your life, your karma, your situation, and is able to give from that infinitely full mirror of wisdom the reflection, the advice that you need to get. So mirror and water are examples of the Buddha's kindness in helping us overcome our fixed ideas, our rigid mind, and the way this puts us into conflict and hostility with ourselves, with other people and circumstances. I have a few things more to say. Today we were supposed to go on to the Ratna family, but we'll get there in the end. It doesn't matter. One is, you've got a whole list, so I won't go through the list that you've got in your support document. In there, you've got a whole list of associations. So for instance, one of them is, if we are focused in the Eastern direction on Buddha Akshobhya and on the relative journey of forbearance, overcoming hostility, and the ultimate truth that there never was hostility or forbearance to be practiced, everything's perfect, then that kind of work purifies our karma for rebirth in the animal realm. So as we sit in our mandala with these 5 Buddhas above us and around us, then when we're focused on Akshobhya and everything the mirror-like wisdom means, then this naturally is purifying our animal rebirth karma. Akshobhya Buddha is seated on an elephant throne. And so in Tonkas, they are thrones with elephants painted on them. In statues, you get 4 elephants one on each corner. Because of painting thrones, you need to put actually 8 elephants, one on this side of a corner, one on the other side. Anyway, elephant, stability, forbearance, able to cope with anything. And in the ancient world, nothing was stronger than an elephant. These days we've got diggers, excavators, we've got huge helicopters that can lift whole buildings and carry them from one place to another. But in the past, an elephant was the strongest thing. And the way the elephant works, it walks, boom, boom, boom. So stable. Some say the Buddha walked like an elephant. The whole, just seeing the Buddha walk helped you feel this stability that can cope with everything. It's not like me rushing around like a madman. Stability. So the elephant. Now, the one last thing to mention is there is a special association of Akshobhya Buddha with the Jawa Karmapas. And for instance, in the Vajra crown ceremony, when we see the ceremony, we see the Karmapa and places the Vajra crown on the head and then turns the crystal mala. And sometimes in the explanation it says, Karmapa is the embodiment of Chinrezig and Karmapa is becoming Chinrezig. But the inside of Chinrezig, the deeper aspect of Chinrezig, is Akshobhya Buddha. So the Karmapa has given teachings about his connection with Akshobhya Buddha, and especially with the Vajra crown and the history of the Vajra crown, which goes back to the first Karmapa. It says he made his own Vajra crown, so it wasn't so posh or so elaborate as the one that the 5th Karmapa received from the Chinese emperor, which I've seen live. It was my job for some months to be one of the protectors of that crown as we took it through customs, going from one country to another. There's no time for the funny stories, but I can tell you, once we were stuck in the customs at Dover, and the Karmapa's own personal attendant, who carried a knife, said they'll have to kill me before they open that box, because no one is allowed to see the crown. And they said, what is it? And of course, it's made of jewels. It's got some priceless gems. It's an antique from the Emperor Yongle of China, and so on and so on. And so he said, no, it's diplomatic baggage, because the Karmapa had a diplomatic passport. So the whole thing, this was late in the evening. And so they had to phone up somebody in the Home Office, Foreign Office. That was my job. So we were 2 hours on the phone. And then in the end, I think they got so fed up, they just let us go through. But anyway, it's something I've seen. It's wonderful. And it's often called the black crown, but it's not black. It's deep blue. It's like the night sky. It's deep blue, and it's the crown of Akshobhya. So anyway, Akshobhya, the Karmapas, there is something very special there. And so I need to get on. No more stories, but there are lots of them. So then this Akshobhya Buddha to the east is very much related to our heart chakra, the color blue, and the heart chakra. So as we feel Akshobhya to the east, then we feel our own heart chakra here. There's a profound connection. So now let's move on. Let's start moving on to the now to the south. The south is to our right, and the Ratna family, jewel family. Ratna means jewel. So here the Buddha is Ratna Sambhava. It means Sambhava means what gives rise to what is precious, very, very precious. It is our true nature, and Ratna Sambhava to our right, golden in color, embodies sameness wisdom. We have 5 families, 5 enlightened wisdoms, and Ratna Sambhava is the purification of the earth element. It's like if you could go into the earth element deeper and deeper and deeper, everything it is, then at the end you would find the earth element is a manifestation in your mind, and its very essence is Ratna Sambhava, earth element. Now, what is it that obscures, that blocks our immediate recognition of sameness wisdom and the purity of the earth element, which is the stability of our mind, where our mind is rooted in its own true nature? What obscures that? It is pride, one thing, and one aspect of pride, which is attachment, and to a relative extent, desire. So our result by removal is to get rid of our pride. Now, here I need to explain the Tibetan word that's translated as pride, because in fact it's not pride. We're looking at something much bigger than pride, much vaster, covers quite a few English words. What words or terms? A sense of entitlement, complacency, taking life's gifts to you for granted, insecurity, possessiveness. So it covers many words. The Tibetan term is nga. We were talking before the session started about pronouncing some Tibetan words. This is nga. Nga is the Tibetan word for me, I. Nga. Nga. Jal. Jal means victor, a winner. Sometimes it means a king. Jalpo. Nga, me, a winner. I'm on a winning streak. I'm doing okay. I am all this. So here we're looking at good karma, where you have. Whereas the Vajra family to the east is very much about knowing. You feel you know. And because of your knowing, your fixed ideas, you feel you can see through this, and therefore you're critical of it because it's limited and it didn't look to be at all. Knowing is very important in the East. Vajra family. Vajra family are knowers. They're very uncomfortable if their knowing is threatened. They might be the sort of people who want to bluff. In Britain, about 30, 40 years ago, there's a whole series of books. Bluff your way through this, bluff your way through that. The Vajra family doesn't like to be seen as not knowing, not on top of the situation. So they'll be very crafty in a conversation. And oh yes, oh yes. And if anyone asks to follow up, they'll try and change the subject. Knowing is very, very important. And the idea that you might not know is very uncomfortable. Now we go to the south, to our right. Having is very important. Now it means having stuff, of course, possessions, but also it means having knowledge, having status, having power. So the having is very, very important. We, through our past karma, have gifts now. We're okay financially, materially. We are educated, and so we're okay mentally. We're okay maybe emotionally. We're strong in a certain sense. We have a lot of presence, a lot of influence, magnetism in a certain way. We are. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that we, the ego, the main poison, identifies itself through what it has. I'm the guy who's the visiting professor in etymology. I have this skill, this knowledge. I'm the guy with a few £1 million in the bank, and so on. So whatever it is, we have, and we identify with the having, which makes us very vulnerable and fragile. Here we're with the earth element, and our ground, what we are grounded in, is not stable, it's not reliable, because what we have is simply the passing fruits of our karma. But we don't see it like that. We've got completely used to it. We take it for granted. We have a sense of entitlement. For instance, I've got one friend, nice guy, very nice guy, and so on, but not say too much because people will start guessing who he is. But he's very well off. And so he automatically always travels first class because it's very nice. He's just used to it. And he wouldn't normally think of traveling any other way unless there wasn't a choice. And so his whole life has a certain standard of living that he's used to. For him, that's normal. For me, his standard of living is materially amazing. I'm not saying I'd like it, but having done a lot of traveling, tourist class in my life, I know the 1 or 2 times I travel business class, it's like, wow, what luxury. You actually get to lie flat and sleep overnight, before you wake. And people are so nice to you. They come and they really serve you. It's not like in tourist class where they want to get rid of you as quickly as possible and they're not very polite. So he does first class, but that's normal for him. And then for us here, the fact that we have a roof over our head, enough food to eat. We've been living in a Europe that was very, very peaceful until now. And we take so much for granted. It's normal. And we'd suffer if all of a sudden some of it was taken away by war, by poverty, by loss of a job, by having to go somewhere else. So this getting used to falling asleep in the passing gifts of karma. Na, me, Jal, doing okay. I'm a winner. And then because of that, we sometimes do have pride, so we feel superior to others. And we can be kind. Jal, I'm a winner. We can be very generous because we've got lots. So then our ego is like, me, yes, come and stay for the weekend. No, I've got a few spare rooms. It's no problem at all. Oh, you don't have a car, borrow mine. You can be generous, but you build a persona based in what you have. It's like me. What have I got? I've got a Saturday morning Sangha. Somehow built up a class. And it's because I have knowledge. I've been given wonderful things by my teachers. If I didn't have that, who would I be? Just another person living in a house My I could be very much constructed around the knowledge, the blessings, and so on that I have. I'd be a fool if that was the case. Be foolish, because it will go. I will die. Need to start again, and so on and so on. So this falling asleep in our blessings, rather than turning them to good use, 100%. Falling asleep in them so that our compassion eyes are not so open to those who have less. That stops us from sharing. That stops us from being more of a benefactor than we can be. So on our bodhisattva path, the greed and the attachment to what we have is something we work on regularly, systematically, step by step. But here with Ratna Sambhava, then we are seeing through it all, cutting through it all. So when we find our pride, this sort of being comfortable in who we are because of our passing gifts, when we catch pride at work, spiritual sleepiness at work, then we need to cut through it. And this is where Buddha Ratna Sambhava helps us. We realize that beyond pride and identifying with our gifts, and working with that, Ken on his path, proud Ken attached to his knowledge, Ken attached to his nice house and so on, whatever it is, beyond the Ken who's there in his current state of ignorance and limitation, working on it through the bodhisattva path. All the time, there has been Buddha Ratna Sambhava, who embodies what? Sameness, wisdom. Sameness. So let's call it pride or possessiveness, that's characteristic of the poison here, makes us separated from others. It gives us an attitude. The sameness wisdom helps us realize how everyone's got their attitude. And it gets curious. Now here, I don't have time. And I talk and talk and talk. And after an hour now, you're fed up with the sound of my voice. But it's to give you stuff to work with. The easy bit, or the easier bit, is that we can understand someone who's well off, got lots of possessions, and so like the Deva realm, people are spiritually lazy, and they just take it for granted, and they're very, very shocked when change comes along and they lose it. You can imagine that. But sometimes if we go now, not so much to stuff and material stuff, but to emotions, some people's possession is their misery. They identify with these results of their karma. It's very, very, very delicate area to talk about. But depending what it is, what happened in childhood when you grew up, or what happened very recently because something went wrong physically, we can start to associate with ourselves as the underdog, as the victim, as the ill person. That can become our possession. So all of that gets tricky. We're looking at the way we identify. Now, here the season we are dealing with is end of summer, autumn. Sort of. In the Tibetan text, the Tibetan seasons are very particular because of their climate and their altitude. And seasons vary from country to country. And as we know now, some countries nearer the equator don't really have vivid seasons like the non-equatorial countries. Anyway, roughly speaking, we're dealing with end of summer, beginning of autumn. And when we look in nature at that time, it's when the fruits have fallen to the earth and they're rotting in the earth. It always makes me laugh seeing a forest in autumn, because for humans generally it's very, very beautiful. You get these brown, golden, orange, yellow leaves. And you're thinking it's so beautiful. And you're looking at rot, basically. The reason it's golden or yellow or brown is because what was full of life and full of chlorophyll is now rotting, and it will fall to the ground and then totally rot, and it will go into the ground as enrichment for the future. So we're looking at past karma that gave us what we have now, either in a straightforward way, our possessions, our skills, or in a very twisted way that gave us also the poverty that we can identify with, or whatever it is, a victim nature we can identify with, and so on and so on. So we're looking at stuff that's already happened, and we are right in the phase of identifying with it. This is me, feeling of me. I'm a BMW man, or I'm a private jet man, or I'm a cancer victim man, or whatever it is. And so quite a few sources, and I don't know where this comes from in the scriptures, but I think it must do because it's quoted, talk about an example of what we're looking at here, of a rotting log, right? A log was once a branch or a trunk of a tree, something full of life, supplying life, and so on. But now it's fallen off, it's on the ground, and it's rotting. It's still there, but it's rotting. We're in the stage of rotten karma. You can put it that way, or rotting karma. It's there. And in one way, the rotting log can be very rich. Once you go down with your eyes or with a magnifying glass, you've got microfungus, you've got little insects running around, and it's gradually leaking into the soil and putting nutrients in the soil. There is a certain prosperity there. But at the same time, it is on the way out. It's on the way out. So here we want to be very, very much aware of our karma. And the paramita that we practice here, just like it was forbearance for the Vajra family in the East, is that of right conduct. Right conduct. So we have resources. We have a richness due to the past. We can either use it for ego, this is the point, or we can use it however well it can be used. Doesn't necessarily mean giving it away, that's part of it sometimes, but using it with an awareness of how everyone is as important as we are. When we have the poison, the obscuration, it is self first. When we have the wisdom of sameness, then we realize that we're all the same. And not just all the same, every other being, and they are without limit. Every other being is just like us inside. So many of our teachers say this, all of them in their teachings. Just like you, they want to be happy. They want to be free. They want. Every being. So this universal awareness of Buddha is there in the mirror-like wisdom, but how now as we look in the mirror, we realize the sameness of every being. We're all on a journey. We'll all end up Buddha. We all have Buddha nature. So we'll carry on with the Ratna family next week. I think I need to finish this week. I think I do need to go just to the Patrol Rinpoche. Remember these 5 verses? And so here, we're on the 2nd verse. And he says, rather than getting involved with Vajra, look into the cherishing mind. So when we see this practice instruction, when we feel the pride, the distinction of you from others, a feeling that you are better, or a feeling that I'm okay, this, whatever the pride is, the me feeling first class, fat cat, or whatever it is, that feeling. Then we cut through and we look into the mind, which is giving yourself a pat on the back, giving yourself a medal, enjoying your Rolls Royce, or whatever it might be, enjoying giving a Dharma talk and thinking I'm not doing too bad here today. Whatever it is, we cut through it. So we look into it, look directly into that cherishing mind, and you can't find it. Instead, we find the voidness that's always been there. We try and find this mind which is proud. The more we look, the less we can find it. We just find pure mind. It was proud a few seconds ago, but we can't find it anywhere. Primordial voidness, devoid of a person, devoid of stuff, devoid of qualities. All of them were like dreams. So that it says the self-manifesting self-elevation, where we were feeling good about ourselves, which manifested, just came out of our consciousness like that. When we look into it, can't find it and it's gone, like it or not, is self-liberated. This primordial voidness, where we find that timeless nature, is nothing other than sameness, primordial wisdom. From within the self-liberated pride, we recite Om Mani Padme Hum. And let's do that. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 So these are practice instructions. I can share a little story. So in the practice, what you do, you cut through, and whenever you find that proud, associative mind, where you're grounded, earth element, grounded in what you have, rather than grounded in the universal sameness, and we cut through it, which means by looking at it, trying to find it. You can't find it in the non-finding. You find the timeless voidness, the sameness of everything and everyone. And once you've found that, then you go home, Mani Padme Hum, because Chinrazik embodies that. Mani Padme Hum. So in this course I told you about last time in Samiling, retreat with Akon Rinpoche, 6 days, He gave us a good teaching. He said, at the very beginning, I told you how these 5 verses came into the course. I gave you the story last time. He had them printed out for everybody. And he said, when you came on this course, the condition was you would do anything I ask you to do. So I'm asking you to learn these 5 verses by heart. 6-day course. Every day he tested people. There were about 60 people there, I think. People had a resistance to learning them. So he tested on the first day and the second day. And then days 4 and 5 didn't test. People thought, oh, that bit's done. And then on the last day, he made everyone stand up. And only one person remembered these 5 verses. And he did one other thing in that course. He phoned me up on the night before the first day. And he said, I want you to write me a story. About 1 page, not much sense in it, with a few foreign words in it and terms. And he gave me a few other details. I said, okay, this. So I'd written that out. Then the next day he said, Ken said he wants to tell you a story. I thought, no, I didn't. But then, so he said, come and read it to them. So I read this story in which there was an English colonel and he was in a French resort, a Swiss resort, which had a foreign name and they were eating foreign food. Then this person came in. So it was 1 page of, sort of like a page out of a book. He said, oh yeah, Ken wants to tell you stuff, and I want you to listen very, very carefully. That was it. Then he said, okay, sit down. Then the next day, he said, I'm going to give you all a piece of paper and a pencil. I want you to write down whatever you can remember from Ken's story yesterday. Now, because everyone was there for Akon Rinpoche's course, and Akon Rinpoche, they're all devoted, and sort of Ken telling a story, nobody really paid too much attention, and it didn't make any sense either. So even though he'd said, I want you to listen very carefully, people hadn't. So the next day he gave them all a pencil and paper. People had to write down what they remembered and then give it to another person to check how many. And most people, they got 1, 2 facts out of about 30 at least facts. And then he told us all off. He said, look, you came here on the condition you do whatever I said. I said, listen carefully. All the Dharma teachings you've been to, ever since you became a Buddhist, how much wonderful thing you've heard. How much have you taken in? How mindfully have you listened? Was it a waste of time what those wonderful teachers told you and gave you? Because they gave it to you to keep, to treasure, to investigate, to become part of you. And you know, oh, it's in a book somewhere. I've got the recording. I can always look it up. You know, when you fall off the ship in the middle of the ocean, that's not the time to learn to swim. When we go into the bardo, that's not the time. You can't take your books, your recordings. You won't have an online connection where you can go on Wikipedia to work out what the hell's going on. Only what we carry in our hearts as part of us goes with us. And he said at the end, that last day, he said, the only thing I've asked you to do is memorize these 5 verses. He said, if you really explore those 5 verses, it's all the Dharma you need for your whole life. Nothing more. And I ask you to do it, and only one person here. He said, you've asked me for many years why I wasn't giving more retreats, so now you understand. It's a very, very powerful and sad moment, and that's the last retreat he gave. But it's a teaching for all of us. going to many teachings, going online, receiving this and that and that and that is good. It's a virtuous action. Something remains. But when you start to do the work with mindfulness, when you reflect upon the teachings and make them part of yourself, then you need very little. And you will change beautifully and quickly. It's not about information gathering. It's about taking the Buddha to heart. Anyway, let's dedicate anything that was good today. Let's dedicate that we become sincere, good followers of the Buddha and our teachers. Sonam diye tamche zikparne topne nye pedranam pamchene je ganachi palap trukpaye tsipe sole drowa drowarasho janchub semcho rimpoche ma jepanam jechochi jepa nyampame padang kongne kongdo parwarasho. Yeah, thank you all very much, and